If you look at the etymology of some words, it's uncanny how much in your face the secrets, quote unquote, are. For example, if you take something like spelling, if you spell a word correctly, you get the right word. If you misspell it or don't spell it correctly, you don't get the right word. What else is a spell? Magic, right? Casting a spell. If you cast a spell incorrectly, you won't get the right spell or it won't work. But correctly, it will. Now let's break this down a little further. What do you mean? What do I mean by casting a spell? Well, words are vibrations. Everything. It's a series of sounds that you recognize as a message. Every single word you hear is a spell. Some spells arranged in the right order will make you feel sad. Others will make you laugh. Some will make you feel angry. Some will make you feel horny, lonely. They don't work the same on everyone, right? So something that'll make someone happy or laugh would make somebody else sad. Like talking about a certain deficiency that your family member might have, but other people find funny. It's terrible, but it's true. There's more to it than that. Like will. This will happen. That will happen. No matter what. It will. What else is will? Free will, right? I'm going to will this to happen. How did you just use that? I'm going to will this to happen. It's almost like seeing a 5-year-old saying that he will predict the future. I'm going to will this. This will happen. Everything. Everything is broken down. Every single word can be broken down into deeper, actually more simpler meanings that hit us on a level we can't even imagine. We're taught, just not even maliciously, just in general, we're taught to speak and use words as communications. We're taught that a day is 24 hours. But does it have to be? A sleep cycle is 8 hours a day, healthy, right? But the experiment that was done with people in a cave, they were put in a cave and they weren't given any means of telling time. So they couldn't see the sun and they just were chilling in the cave for 40 days, I believe. And when they came out, the people had, I think they did 30 sleep cycles, which means their days were longer. Now, you can go to sleep whenever you want. Obviously, if you're tired, sleep. So they would time themselves, quote unquote, well, without knowing what it is. But they timed themselves, quote unquote, incorrectly because their days were longer, 30 sleep cycles in 40 days. So who's to tell you how long a day is? Who's to tell you that you need to drink 1.5 gallons of water a day or 8 glasses a day? You have to understand that all of these regimens, all of these standards are made for the general population. You, although might be part of the general population, as an individual, you have to adapt these things to your own parameters, right? So like, if the cup of coffee that you get at McDonald's says caution hot and you laugh at it like, of course it's hot, it's coffee. The reason that happened was because somebody spilled hot coffee on their lap and sued McDonald's for millions of dollars and won. Because indeed they didn't warn her that the contents of the hot coffee was hot. Just because that lawsuit happened is why those labels are on those things. That is why the do not slip or the wet floor sign has to be up if there's a wet floor. And the health department gets you on that if you don't, because they don't want to be sued. You see, people, for the most part, unfortunately, still, are pretty much out just to get for something for them. Whatever it is, even if it's helping someone else, they always see an angle. And I know this because I used to be like this. I still am, I guess, to some extent. But I try my best not to do it all the time. And I do use this sort of thinking when it comes to facing people like that. Like when I know someone is trying to get the best of me, or take me for a wild goose chase, I will do it back to them because I think it's only fair. Turning the other cheek was never really my thing, but neither was throwing the first punch. I don't know, something about it. However, after the first punch was thrown, or after my cheek has already been slapped, you better believe that I came back as hard as I could from the first punch I threw, or from the first tactic that I implemented. And sometimes it ended much worse than I wanted it to, because I didn't realize how strong the reaction would be, especially for someone that knows they're going to strike with all their might after they've already been hit once. Because you really have nothing to hold back. You don't feel guilty. You don't have nothing to lose. So the reason I'm trying to tell you this is the one thing, or the two things rather, that you can do on a daily basis. Forget about mind hacking and all that other stuff, which is, don't forget about it, it's great. But if you want to start basic, I always say, do the right thing when no one's looking. Like I've been on dating sites before and I fill out profiles and they say, what do you do when no one's looking? And I say the right thing. Because it's very rare that people do the right thing when no one's looking. Usually people do the right thing when everyone's looking. And when no one's looking, they walk around it. Because the right thing is usually not the easiest thing to do. But the funny part about that is that if you live outside of your comfort zone, if you live in your difficult zone, it gets smaller and smaller every day, which means your comfort zone gets wider and larger. You know what I mean? It's we do not dare because things are difficult. Things are difficult because we do not dare. Meaning, if you dared to do something that you thought was impossible every single day, then after enough days, nothing would be impossible. After a couple of days, nothing would seem impossible, but then after a few days, nothing will be impossible. The only way to achieve, right, the absence of desire, wanting, how they say, how do you want? How do you stop wanting? I want desire. I want to not want. I want to not have desire, but that's desire. I just, fuck. It's like a never-ending cycle. And I wish somebody had told me this long time ago when I first heard this. Excuse me. Sneeze on the truth, they say in Russia. I wish somebody had told me this a long time ago. But the one way to not have desire, to be absent of desire, is to be content with what you have. Because if you're happy with what you have, and if you're happy with nothing, or basically what you have right now is essentially nothing to you because you already have it. Everything you have is good. And usually people want a little bit more. A faster car, more expensive shirt, a prettier girlfriend, whatever it is. What you have now, people disregard as nothing. It's as if they're at, baseline, zero. And especially super successful people that always strive and to excel, that's even more so. Every day they wake up and they're nothing again. They just clean slate and they try to build from that. Happiness will never be attained to them. They could probably at the end of their lives sit back and look at all of their accomplishments and say, yeah, I did that. But then if somebody asked them on their deathbed, are they happy? Usually they say no, because it takes a while for some people to realize that at the end of the day, it's not about what you did and how many accomplishments you made, but it's how you made them. And it's not about the situations that you overcame, but how you overcame them. If you have difficulties in your life and you muscle through it, that's one thing. But if you're wise enough to move around them, or even better, to accept them, deal with them, and then pass them on, all sealed up for the next person to see, and warn them about them, in hopes that they would avoid it, This is why they say to read, because when you read or when you study other people's work, their flaws, the challenges that they overcame, that took them blood, sweat, and tears to overcome, you could overcome just by reading a page in a book. But you have to read it and you have to take it in. So everything that you hear, everything that you see on every second of your life changes you, whether you like it or not. And the reason that people that don't like change and like things the way they are usually end up really stagnant and actually decline. And they wonder, how the fuck am I declining? I've always liked it this way, and now it's all going against me. Because the universe is not about monotony. It is not about maintaining the same thing over and over again. As a whole, as a homeostasis, has to have a balance, yes. But you have to contribute to that balance with change. The balance in your life is to adapt every single day to new things. Learn as much as you can, but learn it. Don't speak on it unless you know, because if you're wrong, you'll sound like more of a fool. But if you're confident enough and you believe you're right, then speak like you know it. Because even if you are wrong at that point, you could say to yourself, I did the best I could and I'm still wrong. That means I still have something to learn. That's it. Don't defend yourself. Don't find excuses to why you were wrong. Don't find excuses or apologies for what you did. Don't apologize for what you did unless you knew that you were doing something wrong. And if you do apologize, don't do it with words. Do it with actions. Don't defend yourself. Just say that I will do better next time. And not to them, to you. You don't owe anybody anything. At the end of the day, in this term, you don't owe anybody anything. Unless you've promised it to them, then you do. Because you set that spell on yourself. You have my word. What is your word? In some circles, it means your life, like the mafia. In other circles, it means nothing, like spiritual versus witch talk. But at the end of the day, it's how you respect yourself. And usually, the reason that the people that are successful and count their accomplishments at the end of the day are not content with their lives is because they realize that self-respect doesn't come from accomplishments, but how you achieve those accomplishments. So if you did all these great things, but you lied, cheated, stole the whole your way through it, on your deathbed you won't be content. If you muscled through everything just to get the one thing that you wanted, money, and you didn't pay attention to your kids, or you mistreated your parents, or you didn't have any friends, or you decided not to have kids, you're going to lie on your deathbed and you're going to wish that you had kids. The one thing that everybody wishes on their deathbed, that's super successful, movie stars, music stars, all this very, very famous, very rich people that lived a fulfilling life of beauty and bounty. The one thing that they regret was that they didn't spend enough time with people they cared about. And if they could sacrifice their fortune for it, they would. Alexander the Great had a very, very good point in this when he was getting buried. He died around 40, I believe, from a sickness. I think it was either pneumonia or something like that. The doctors couldn't save him. And basically, for his funeral, he requested 3 things to be done, or he ordered it actually, because he just conquered the Persian Empire, which is the biggest empire. And by the time he was 40, it was like insane. And he wished 3 things. One, that his grave or his coffin was carried to his grave by his doctors, symbolizing that doctors, even the best ones, cannot cure death. It's inevitable. The second thing was all of the wealth and the riches and gold and whatever, jewels, precious stones that he acquired throughout his conquests were lined in the road to his coffin, to his grave, symbolizing that the treasures that you have here, material treasures that is, you can't take with you. They don't mean anything. Nothing. And the third thing he requested was that there were holes cut into his actual coffin, and his hands or his arms were to be displayed outside of the coffin, palms facing up, symbolizing that the way you came into this world is the way you will go out. empty-handed. The only difference is when you go out, hopefully you'll have enough up here. And hopefully you have spread enough of that to the people around you to not remember your name, but remember what you taught them and what you did. I don't want people to remember my name. I could care less. I don't even want people to remember me. I want people to act the way I tell them to act, but not because I tell them to, because they genuinely see, they genuinely understand that that is the only way out. The only reason I'm saying this is because some people hear it and it clicks. They're like, wow, you blew my mind. I never thought of it that way. And that's the seed. And the seed grows and grows. And then that person will get back to me 6 months later and say, hey, look what I did. And they'll tell me something. And then that little something that they told me was as a result of me telling them, like way back when, right? But something that they tell me plants a different seed in my head. Now I'm like, whoa, you're right. So without me telling them originally, I would have never gotten the piece of information that they gave me that now leads me to my next venture or my next idea, thought. I never asked for anything of that in return. I didn't want it. I didn't know. I was just doing it to help the person out. But in their gratitude, which is the other thing you should have always about everything. If this is a simulation and we're batteries for the machines, be grateful. Fine. If Neo hasn't come, Morpheus given me the red pill, and I'm just strapped in the Matrix, fine. I'm grateful for that. Thank you. Because where would you rather be? People don't like this life. They want to end it. Where would you rather be? Would you rather be everybody happy and everyone treats you differently? You wouldn't like that either. Because it's not about everyone else. It's about you. So if you could be content with what you have, you're very, very, very far ahead than most. And if the environment that you're in is causing you to have detrimental reminders of what it's like not to have appreciation for the things you have, then you must change your environment no matter how strong you think there's a hold of it or a view on it. As it turns out, the most complicated things are usually the simplest. And the simplest, as we think, like words, are usually the most complicated.